home stretch. Hasn't this day flown by? Oh my gosh, I feel like we just started. I feel like I was just up here. I feel like I was going to introduce Elton John again. But we're not. I've got two amazing speakers to introduce you. I'm so excited about this next panel. So this morning I shared the news that former two-time governor of Utah, former ambassador to China, former ambassador to Russia, and now current president of Mastercard Strategic Growth and vice chairman of Mastercard, we snagged Jon Huntsman. He's going to come out here and he's going to interview the most amazing, and I say E because she's so excellent and she's so into technology and she's like the AI champion of the world. But she is the most incredible commerce secretary I think our country has ever seen. She is a former governor of Rhode Island. She is a champion for justice, and she's a champion for business, but business that understands how to do well by doing good. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a Center for Inclusive Growth round of applause to Jon Huntsman and the Honorable Gina Raimondo.
Madam Secretary.
Yes, sir.
What an honor to be with you. As I told you outside, I'm an alum of the Commerce Department.
I just learned that. I mean, I already loved you, but now I love you even more.
That was so nice of you to say that.
No,
Let me
it's true.
return that kind comment by saying, I've watched the department over the years. I'm somewhat familiar with the secretaries, going all the way back to Avril Harriman, who was a governor too. And I have to say that you are probably the most accomplished Commerce Secretary in the history of the Commerce Department.
Wow.
And so
I don't know about that.
I say that with no hint of hyperbole. I'm not looking for a vote, and you're not looking for a vote.
Exactly.
Although maybe we should get together and ask people for a vote. I don't know. So let me just start. So I want to kind of, in our few moments together, kind of elevate the conversation. We've had so many terrific and brilliant people present today, passionate about inclusive growth, passionate about developing networks and partnerships, because you can't do it alone. The government can't do it alone. The private sector can't do it alone. NGOs can't do it alone. It takes a whole lot of folks. So I want to start just by putting technology kind of in perspective. That's a word that is used a lot. And the Commerce Department, I don't think a lot of people realize this, is really the overseer of much of the nation's technology policy. So technology is both a source of strength, innovation, and growth, but I think also a source of fear in that people are left behind. How should this group approach and think about technology in terms of inclusive growth and how we can maybe connect more people around the world in ways that would lift livelihoods and promote more opportunity?
Yeah. It's such an important question, and it's very fun to be here with you. This former governors, I mean, we don't exactly have a secret handshake, but there's an instant bond, I think, because, I don't know, it's just something about being a governor. It's the best job in the world, and I did admire your leadership. So thank you to Mastercard, and thank you for the great question. You know, prior to being governor, I was in the private sector. I was an investor in healthcare technology companies. And so I come to the work with a deep appreciation for technology, and I'm excited about innovation and an early adopter. But I'll tell you, when I was the governor, I governed Rhode Island during COVID. And I learned so much. I had a front row seat to the good and the bad of technology, which is to say, when equally distributed, technology is incredible. If everyone had access to virtual telehealth appointments, technology was amazing. Technology could save lives when people stuck in their house and they could access a doctor. But small businesses that weren't digitally enabled all went out of business. which was so sad. Small and medium-sized businesses that digitized flourished. School children who could transition effectively to online learning did all right. Still not as good as in person, but did okay. Kids who didn't have a computer or didn't have the internet at home really struggled. So, and of course, AI will be that level, on steroids. So I think people's fear of technology is rooted in fact and their real experience of being left behind when other people have tech and they don't. So to me, that means it's on us, those of us in the public sector and in the private sector, to make it so that everyone has equal access to the best technology. Because if we can equalize access, then it's upside and we can make it so people shouldn't have to be afraid. Like I had such an experience as governor. I would go into the community and give out, we had this huge effort to make sure everybody had broadband. And we gave out laptops and phones and such. It was life-saving. But if you didn't have it, it was very tough.
So when you think about AI, because you hear the debates about the fear factor and the opportunity factor, and I think there's a little bit of both, but how do you think about AI as you kind of walk out of the doors of the Commerce Department, which is responsible for a lot of this on the policy side? Are you excited and optimistic about where this is taking us, or do you fear?
Both, but more excited. More excited. I mean, it's incredible. I've never seen anything like this in my career, like the pace at which AI is moving and making changes in business. But it is also scary. And for the first time, in my lifetime, we have a technology which will be very disruptive to white-collar, highly educated workers. And that's an interesting phenomenon. That's an interesting thing. And it's sort of, we all have to embrace it. At whatever age and stage and industry you're in, it's time to learn and embrace so you can become more efficient. So it's exciting. Look, I spend a lot of my time thinking about the national security risks associated with what if AI, most advanced AI gets into the hands of China or Iran or Russia. That is stay awake at night stuff. That way scares me and outweighs the excitement, so we have to be careful about that.
I love your optimism. And I share your optimism. National security concerns aside, I share your optimism. So let's go back to your work as governor.
Yes.
Because we both share that bond.
Yes.
And so far as I can tell, based on the history of the department, you're the third governor. Averell Harriman, who was governor of New York, and Gary Locke.
Gary Locke, yes.
Who I worked with in China.
Yes. Oh, right, of course.
Who took my place in China.
Yes.
Who's terrific. Who was governor of Washington. So you've worked on the local list of issues, and for those of you who haven't been governor,
you should try it. You should definitely try it. It's a great job.
It's an awesome job, and part of it is because it deals with people.
Yeah,
and if you
right.
like working with people, there's not a better job in the world, and you get to work on the most local of issues. So now you've elevated your purview to working and focusing on problem solving around some of the most important global challenges. So how did that work in the trenches at the local level inform your worldview and perhaps make you better at what you're doing today? And what should our friends in the audience here walk away thinking about local versus global and how both can kind of come together to solve problems?
That's a really interesting question. Look, the thing I miss most, I love my current job. I love the president. I love all that we're doing. It's kind of a heyday for the Commerce Department for all the reasons you said.
Well, you've made it that way.
Well, it is as it is. But the thing I do miss is really interacting with the people you serve. And of course, I was governor of Rhode Island, which is a small state, one of the most densely populated states in the country. And I really miss it. I miss being in the community, being in the neighborhoods, being on the beaches, being in the grocery stores with the people you serve, seeing the impact that you can make, and also, honestly, like hearing from people. You get very disconnected in Washington pretty fast. So I miss it, but I think I take that with me. And so what I try to do, which is harder in this job, is get to know the people we serve. It's like, so I try to get out. It's hard. It's not like being a governor. But at the end of every decision we make, really as a person, a small business, a family, whoever, whose lives are meaningfully impacted by our work. So for instance, on Monday, I was in Texas. Commerce Department gave a $6.5 billion grant to Samsung to do a huge expansion of their manufacturing facility in Texas. And I got to meet people. I met dozens of construction workers. I met this young woman who was the engineering manager of the facility. I heard her whole story. I met a young person who went to the local community college on a program we funded, getting a job at Samsung, which was exciting and exhilarating. But also I had a minute, like, where did we get it wrong? Why was it so hard? You know, what could have we done better? What could have, you know, and you learn. So I'd like to think I'm a better secretary because I bring that lens with me. For me, it's not esoteric academic policy. Also, here's another thing, and this is a fact, and I hope I don't offend anyone. Smart people and smart ideas are a dime a dozen. A brilliant policy paper, a zillion people could write. Actually making it happen operationally, that's tough stuff. And so don't know if I'm especially good at it, but I value it. And valuing the operations, I learned being governor, and I try to bring it every day in secretary.
I love that. You have to be an implementer when you're a governor.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you're held accountable in the end by the people.
Yes.
Who care deeply about what you do and the decisions you make. So that takes me to public-private partnerships. So we're surrounded here and live streaming to a lot of doers and implementers who love getting things done on the ground. So you've been in the private sector. You've been in the public sector, obviously, where you sit today. How should this group think about public-private partnerships? In terms of building sustainable public-private partnerships and those that really are able to focus on inclusive economies, which is a tough thing to do.
Yeah.
We talk about it a lot, but actually hitting the ground with the right ideas, the right partnerships, collaborative arrangements is what it's all about. That's why we're all here. This is about partnerships and bringing people together, because no one organization or sector of life can get it done.
Oh, that's right.
So what's your take on public-private partnerships, and do you have any advice for the group in terms of how to strengthen those and to make them work most efficiently?
I think they're essential. I will go a step further. Like, if you think about the great moments when America leapt forward, they always involved some form of public-private partnership. If you think about it, you know, moonshot moments in America have resulted from academia, business, and government working together. And like CHIPS Act, for example, you know, in the CHIPS Act, for every dollar of government money we put out there, there'll be another $10+ of private capital. And there's a huge academic component. That's where things really happen, I think. I had the honor of leading our first ever presidential trade mission to the Philippines. And I took a couple dozen companies with me, including Mastercard.
I think Shamina was there.
Shamina was there.
Yes.
Shamina was there. There you go. Shamina was there.
We need to know if Shamina was in pink.
I'm sure she was. She's very colorful. But anyway, we showed up and it was fantastic. And Mastercard made major announcements about training folks with digital skills in the region. Other companies made huge announcements. A week after we left, UPS made a big logistics announcement. So we had this amazing meetings with women, Filipinas, business owners who wanted to digitize their businesses so they could expand. We had, Google, Microsoft, Mastercard, excited to do that. So it's where it's at, I think. It requires the government to be receptive, be easy to work with, be not afraid to work with business, and requires businesses to make the time and money available to make the investments. But like you talk about AI, we have all the actions in the private sector. Private sector is storming ahead with AI. We have to regulate it for national security, but also embrace it. And so I'm a big public-private partnership person. Fundamentally also, if you think, as I do, that the scourge on this country's democracy is our division, public-private partnerships bring people together, literally shoulder to shoulder, working together. When I was governor, Rhode Island became the first state in the country to teach computer science in every public school in every grade. How did we do that?
That's better than we did in Utah.
Oh, well, there you go. But I was after you. I'm sure I took your idea and expanded on it.
The little known fact is the governors steal each other's ideas, right?
Always.
There's
All
some
my
like you
best
who are
ideas
ahead
I
and
stole.
create ideas, then everybody steals your idea.
Or me for many others. But anyway, we had a whole bunch of companies that provided the computer science curriculum and taught the teachers. The government did what we had to do. I brought in local volunteers from IT companies to mentor the kids. It was unbelievable. So I'm a believer.
So we don't have a lot of time left, Gina,
Yeah,
and I'd
sorry.
love to talk about the CHIPS Act and so many things that your department is doing in a very historic way. I mean, this has not been done before. Kind of the onshoring of industry and the opportunities and the job training and all that that will go with it. But finally, I want to ask about and this is just a real kind of tactical question that I'm sure a lot of folks here have thought about, breaking down barriers.
Yeah.
So if we're talking about sustainable, inclusive approaches to economic growth, and we have public and private and multilateral organizations involved, what in your experience is the best way to break down the barriers and execute in ways that are most efficacious for people? Because I have found, at least in my own career, that you talk about the academic papers, it's great to talk in a very high level way about doing this or that. Hitting the ground with the ideas and actually breaking through sometimes bureaucratic government barriers is a really difficult thing to do. And I suspect that most people sitting here and watching are thinking about, I've got a really good idea. How do I make it work? How do I actually implement it?
Yeah, this is such a big issue, and I really wish I had a better answer. I think, Tip O'Neill said all politics is local. I think most things are also personal, which is to say, you got to convince the other party kind of why it matters to them, and it's in their interest to participate in whatever it is. Like, it's in a company's best interest to make sure the average American is well-educated, has digital skills. So they ought to spend some money making sure that happens. It's in the government's interest to do similar things. But, I do think often we stay up here and we net it out to, here's why it matters to you, and here's why it's worth you participating. And we'll tell a quick story. I know we're out of time, but prior to being governor, I was state treasurer of Rhode Island. And in that job, I tried to reform our state's public pension system because it was underfunded and going to run out of money. And that's extremely difficult politics for a Democratic politician, as you would know. Public sector labor unions were not happy. Anyway, I was going around for months talking about how underfunded we were, billions of dollars in the hole, and people's eyes were glazing over. One day I had a real moment. I was talking to a guy who I didn't know, whose daughter was developmentally disabled. And he said to me, "Thank you for doing what you're doing on pension reform." And I said, "Why do you say that to me?" And he said, "Because my daughter used to have an aide paid for by the state that took her to the movies once a month, but the pension cost was eating up a lot of the budget, and as a result, not trimming the pension meant they cut, aid to folks with developmental disabilities." So he said, I remember we were in the checkout line at a store called Benny's. And he said, I want people to have their retirement, but my daughter should be able to go to the movies once a month too. And I said, you're right. And then the light bulb went off for me, and this guy became a huge supporter of pension reform, and he got a whole community of parents with developmentally disabled kids to join the cause. So what's my point? It's connectivity. All these issues are connected. And if we connect the dots for how they're connected, it motivates people to engage. And then if we're charging towards the same purpose in a connected way, that's when amazing things happen.
I hate that we're out of time.
So fun.
It's such an honor.
By the way, he flew overnight to be here. He lost his bags. It's someone else's clothes. He looks fabulous. Doesn't he look fabulous? Yeah. So,
what do I do?
You're a star.
At least I got to change my socks. Otherwise, you would have had a miserable time up here.
True. Thank God for little favors.
It is such an honor to spend time with you, Madam Secretary.
Fun to be with you.
I don't know. I just have this sneaking suspicion we're going to be learning from you for a lot of years to come.
Well, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank you.